Gaijin Entertainment presents The Shooting Range. You're watching The Shooting Range, a weekly show for all tankers, airmen, and aspiring captains in War Thunder. And not just some regular episode, but a Christmas special. In this episode, a Christmas gift from Gaijin, the Japanese ground forces. Once upon a December, that time when a German ace refused to shoot down a damaged Allied bomber. Hotline, the developers answer questions that you left in the comments. But first, let's start with all the important things that became a part of the game this year. Even though 2016 was not particularly kind to the world at large, it brought a lot of interesting and exciting changes to War Thunder. The year started strong with the appearance of the British armor. Comets and Centurions didn't come empty-handed. The players got access to 2 new maps, Tunisia and El Alamein. Furthermore, we tweaked water physics and introduced amphibious tanks to the game. Eventually, this led to the appearance of the excellent LVT and the PT-76. 1.51 Royal Armor update also brought a new game mechanic called Battle Tasks. These are special missions you can accomplish to get rewards that allow you to purchase Ranger premium vehicles, decorators, and other nice items. Then came the spring, and with it 2 new winter maps. What can be better than celebrating the end of the cold season with some games on the snowy Volokolamsk or the Frozen Pass? April's Fool's Day allowed every tanker or pilot of War Thunder to step into the shoes of a pirate captain and traverse the seas under billowing sails. And in May, the game was thoroughly shaken up with the introduction of deadly ATGMs that allowed for some really interesting gameplay choice on higher ranks. The vehicles of a new type came in a bundle with a new location for mixed battles, the port of Novorossiysk. That was not all, of course. Soon, the players discovered the battlefields of Sinai and the skies of Greece. If you count the most recent additions in the form of the 38th Parallel and the Abandoned Factory, this year you got 9 new maps in total. Another important update introduced crew reinforcements, a new mechanic designed to increase survivability of your tanks. This year also set a very important precedent. The game got its first vehicle model that was designed by a player, the magnificent German HE-219-9 Interceptor. Great job, bud! Our modelers haven't been idle as well. Among other vehicles, you got the legendary T-62, the ZSU-23-4 Shilka, the M163 Vulcan, and the Tu-4. And one of the biggest planes ever, the German BV-238. Now, with the Way of the Samurai unlocking a whole new range of exciting choices, we certainly hope to keep you busy during the holidays. And the last big thing, we finally started to test naval forces. It's still in closed beta, but the title of a captain has already been claimed by thousands of players. You can ask, what about in-game sounds, graphics, and the technical side of things? Well, mate, all of that goes without saying. That's the way we will remember this year. What about you? Let us know in the comments. And speaking of the samurai, let's take a look at the long-awaited Japanese combat vehicles. Finally, it is all fair. Every nation in the game has its own ground forces. The Japanese now have a healthy roster of around 30 vehicles, each of which, in honesty, deserves its own section. That's why we're only going to talk about the most important aspects of the Japanese ground forces. First of all, some of the vehicles that fight under the Japanese flag are actually American. A few examples. The top Japanese AA vehicle is the well-known M42 Duster. One of the top-tier light tanks is the M41A1 Walker Bulldog. The Japanese didn't stake on heavy armor. Only after the engaged Soviet forces they started to realize that bulletproof plating is hardly enough to protect the lives of crew members. And after the war, the world was quick to adopt heat shells. In the end, the Japanese got a gaping hole somewhere between the 3rd and the 4th rank, and that's exactly where the American armor comes into the play. But do not despair. There are quite a few amazing Japanese designs in that tree. Take a look at the Type 2 Ho-I, for instance. Just a regular low-rank vehicle with a mediocre armor, you say? Cast a glance at its gun and its shells. Oh yeah, a heat round with some crazy penetration at the start of the second rank. Throw some quick reloading into the mix and you get the idea. This vehicle is a nightmare. For opponent, that is. Then consider this machine, the Type 4 Cheeto medium tank. When it comes to firepower, it's at least as good as the T-34. And if you compare it to the T-34 outfitted with the D5T gun, its gun has a considerably faster reload speed. The Type 60 106mm SPRG is in its own category altogether. It has not one but two deadly recoilless guns that are also capable of firing heat rounds. But you'll have to be extra thrifty. This SPRG carries only 10 shots. And here's the Chi-Ri 2, the first tank in the game with an autoloader. 3 shots in 9 seconds? No problem. You'll have to reload for half a minute after that, but who cares? In the hands of a capable tanker, this beast can pose a threat to even rank 5 vehicles. Now, a few words about the top tanks. They look a lot like the Leopard, but in reality, when it comes to combat qualities, the Japanese MBT STB-1 and the Type 74 are more like the American M60. But they have their own advantages, namely low profile and a unique active hydropneumatic suspension, which lets you reconfigure the vehicle for a certain terrain features right in the middle of battle. In other words, you can find yourself a good spot in places other tankers can only dream of. And now, get ready for some special pages of history. Today we're not talking about a vehicle or an engine. This is a tale of chivalry and human kindness. Even surrounded by horrors of war, there were always people who could see past the enemy uniform, see a fellow human being under the wrong flag. And that's only understandable when you can see the faces of your adversaries. But what about the times when you're shooting at a lifeless metal contraption, like an enemy aircraft? On the 20th of December 1943, 2nd Lieutenant Charlie Brown with his co-pilot Spencer Luke and 8 other crew members flew their B-17 Flying Fortress, named Ye Old Pop, deep into German territory to drop some bombs on an aircraft production facility in Bremen. It was their first European mission. A flak took out one of the bomber's engines, and what's worse, the German AA fire made holes in the oil tanks. That was very bad news. Engines and hydraulic systems cannot operate without oil. The aircraft started to lose speed. Soon, it was lagging behind the formation, which made it vulnerable to enemy attack. The B-17 was now hounded by a dozen of enemy fighters, Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf 190s, which damaged the Allied plane so badly that it was barely airworthy. Somehow Brown was able to retain control over his tattered B-17 that itself was a small Christmas miracle. But the crew's woes were far from over. There was another enemy quickly catching up with them, a Messerschmitt Bf-109G. It closed the distance, but its guns stayed silent. The crippled Allied bomber made it for a very easy target, and yet the German pilot did not open fire. The man who flew the German fighter was called Franz Stigler, and he decided that there was no honor in shooting down a well-nigh defenseless aircraft full of injured people. The German pilot tried to communicate with the Allied crew using gestures, but they couldn't understand what he wanted to say and flew on. In the end, Stigler resorted to flying near Brown's plane so that German AA units would not target it. Once he made sure the bomber made it out of the German airspace, he departed with a salute. How did Brown make the rest of the journey and fly 400 kilometers across the North Sea on a semi-destroyed aircraft is a mystery. But he made it, only to be told to keep mum about the whole affair. Stigler also kept the story to himself, which is not surprising given the fact that he could risk execution for what he had done. Only as late as in 1986, Brown decided to make this story public and find a savior. Then, another miracle happened. It turned out that Stigler was still alive and willing to communicate. And that was not the end of it. Charlie Brown and Franz Stigler became close friends and remained so until their deaths. What's also interesting that both of them passed in the same year, 2008, and within several months of each other. Finally, it's time for the traditional last part of our show, Hotline Developers answering questions from the comments. Strictly speaking, it's not the most serious-minded section of the show. If you want answers to be given with solemn faces, feel free to appeal to the official forums. Here we have a more lighthearted discussion of the big questions of War Thunder. I hope you like it. We'll start with a question from a player called Mo Emmanuel. Are you planning to add a more detailed damage model for planes? Nope, not really. We're pretty happy with the system that we already built. It's hardly ideal, but we think that we did a decent job. Not to mention that in its current state, any kind of improvement to the model, however minor, would require a complete overhaul. The second question comes from Robert Gutman. You guys are working your butts off with all new things going on. Asian tanks, naval battles, bomber cockpits. Chill down and take a break for a while. Hey Robert, thanks man. Actually, that's exactly what we're going to do during holidays. Sea Bear Attack writes, I want to hear the screech of the Stuka dive bomber. Okay, wish granted. And then there's the final Christmas question from Captain Clockwork. Gaijin, could you pass the cheesecake, please? Sure thing, buddy, here you go. Can you pour some tea? That's it for the day, but feel free to write your questions in the comments below. We do read them all, and you might see some of them answered in the next episode. If you like what we're doing, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And Merry Christmas!